Welcome to the Montgomery County Department of Permitting Services podcast. I'm Gail Lucas, your host. I'm also the Division Chief of the Customer Support and Outreach Division here at DPS. Joining us on the podcast today is Crystal Maddox, and let me make sure I get this correct. Crystal Maddox is the DPS Architectural, Life Safety, and Fire Protection Section Manager, who's going to talk to us about commercial permits and commercial construction in DPS. How are you, Crystal?
I'm good. How are you, Gail?
Why don't you give us a little bit of information about what your background is in DPS?
Absolutely. So I came to the Department of Permitting Services as a permitting services specialist and then became the manager for the Architectural Life Safety section at that time. It does now include fire protection plan review. Prior to Department of Permitting Services, I was with another jurisdiction doing pretty much the same thing. So I've been around in this industry for over 20 years.
Okay, well, you don't have to tell us how long.
Oh,
no, that's all right. Building safety, as we know, begins with enforcing building codes to ensure that a project is built right, it's built to last, it's built safe. Why don't you tell us how the commercial division, and specifically your section, uses building codes to look at plans and to ensure that buildings are going to be constructed correctly?
Absolutely. So it is our responsibility to ensure the safety and welfare of the public. And we have several codes, standards, regulations that we have to look at in the commercial building construction division to make sure that the minimum requirements are met for that level of safety that we need to have. So for commercial building projects, we have our architectural life safety review, as we mentioned, mechanical review, electrical review, energy, sometimes green building, and even structural review involved in the project. And we have to look at the varying requirements depending on what the project involves to make sure that those minimum requirements are met.
One thing that we often get confusion about or get a lot of customer questions about is the difference, I should say, between residential and commercial. In Montgomery County, 4-story townhouses, apartments, condominiums are all considered commercial structures or commercial buildings. And therefore need a commercial permit, not a residential permit. Right. Can you talk a little bit about what differentiates residential from commercial and how our customers can know that?
Yes. So what folks may not be aware of is that the commercial building code covers all buildings and structures. It actually gives an exemption for 1 and 2 family dwellings or townhomes that are 4-story, or more than 3 stories. We typically see 4-story townhomes that come to the commercial building construction division for review. What causes confusion is not knowing where you fall in that permitting process. We have residential uses that need to be covered under a commercial building permit. And so if someone is unsure about where their project falls, it'd be good to reach out to us to ask those questions, have that conversation. There are residential uses, again, that fall under the commercial building code that we do have to look at.
Okay. Many commercial buildings are also small businesses. And we have a lot of small businesses that are opening in Montgomery County. These businesses need use and occupancies. They are obviously reviewed under the commercial code. Can you talk a little bit about what you're looking at or what you look for with these businesses and why a use and occupancy is so important?
So a use and occupancy is so important because we want to make sure that the space is safe for the type of occupancy that will be in that space. So it's not a one-size-fits-all when it comes to commercial building requirements. It may be that a space was designed for one use and approved for a certain use, and then someone wants to come in and use it for something different. So it is our responsibility to make sure that the space is meeting those minimum requirements for that use that is proposed. It may be that a space was approved for business, and someone wants to come along and put in a retail store, or someone wants to come along and put a place of religious assembly, maybe a daycare. We also often see that there are challenges when folks come in and want to convert a single family home into a commercial building use. But it's important that we look at those, review the plans for compliance, even if there's no work being done, because we have to make sure that whatever those code requirements are for that particular use and occupancy are met for that level of safety that we're looking for. So if you're not sure whether the use and occupancy covers what you're trying to put in that space, reach out to us. We can look at those records if need be. So folks should be mindful of that. We can work with you for that change of use, help you to understand what the requirements may be. But it's very important that we do ensure that the requirements for each occupancy are met for each space.
One of the very important things that we want you to take away from our podcast generally, and particularly for our small businesses, is that before you sign a lease or before you purchase a property, that you come and talk to us about what you intend to use that property for, what may have been in that property before or been in that building before, yes?
Absolutely. We have what we call preliminary design consultations. We hold meetings virtually for these consultations. Folks can sign up for them online. We have an online calendar.
One thing I want to emphasize for our listeners is that preliminary design consultations or pre-design consultations are free to you. They are available every day, Monday or almost every day, Monday through Thursday. And the appointments for the pre-designs fill up very quickly. The calendar for scheduling those is available on our website. You want to get on there as soon as possible. It's available for residential projects as well as commercial projects. Crystal, tell us why it's so very important for folks to have a pre-design consultation.
It's so important because what that does is allow our customers to meet with us before submitting their plans for review. And we can talk about their project, go over any questions or concerns, provide any guidance that we're able to provide. And we have at these meetings all sorts of staff from commercial building as well as zoning. We'll have architectural folks, structural folks, electrical, mechanical, energy, and like I said, zoning is typically present and possibly others depending on the project. And what that does is allow the project to get off to the best start possible, because we'll talk about anything that may be a potential concern or something that may affect a design change. And so those are super important to get folks in there and have that meeting, have your design professional talk with us, and make any changes that result from that meeting prior to submission so that your project has the best chance of getting through the process smoothly.
And you have the opportunity to have your architect folks, your professional design folks join you in that meeting and ask whatever question they need to ask, right?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, we encourage the design professionals to come to that meeting. That helps to have a more productive conversation in terms of technical requirements and codes. These meetings are for a 1 hour time slot. However, we always say you can reach out to us at any time after. We can always schedule another meeting. We're happy to meet or discuss a project with folks at any time.
Sure. Another tool for customers is on our website. There are permitting services dashboards, and there is a commercial dashboard. Talk to us about what folks can look for on that dashboard or how that could be helpful to them.
Right. So the dashboards are available on our website now. We have differing options to look at on our dashboard in terms of data that's available. For commercial building, we have commercial new construction data. We have commercial alteration data. And what that does is give you an idea of maybe the past 30 days or maybe, however much time, what our turnaround times have been. And that can give you an idea of what you may be able to anticipate. What we do tell folks is that when you submit your project for review, anticipate 30 days for the first review cycle on our end to get all of our reviews completed. We do have architectural life safety, mechanical, electrical, structural, and energy in terms of commercial building, and all those reviews have to take place. So our goal is to have those done within 30 days. If there are any corrections or responses needed, we do try to look at those more quickly if we're able to, but that's what folks can anticipate. We also have commercial fast track, which is the process where you can submit your drawings online and have a turnaround within 3 days if it's a qualifying project. That might be a business or mercantile use or something small in nature, simple in nature that qualifies for commercial fast track that we can get in and out for you very quickly. We also have expedited review is something that folks can request if necessary. Talk to us about your timeline. Let's see what we can do, see what we can work out, see if expedited review is necessary, and see if that fits into your project timeline.
It's always better to know upfront what the project timeline is so that we can make accommodations where we can accommodate. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Crystal, we've talked about building codes. We've referenced building codes that DPS uses to evaluate plans, but talk to us specifically about what codes commercial uses in the evaluation of plans and where our listeners might be able to find those codes or to look at those codes.
Right. So for commercial building project, there are several codes that we have to consider when determining whether a project can be approved for permit.
Okay.
Those codes may be from International Code Council, such as the International Building Code, the International Existing Building Code, the International Mechanical Code. We have several codes from ICC that we look at. Also, we look at NFPA standards, and that may include the NFPA 1 Fire Code. It may be NFPA 101 Life Safety Code. The National Electrical Code also comes from there. So there are several codes and standards that we do have to consider and look at to ensure that a project is in compliance. And just for folks to keep in mind, there are other regulations that may come into play for a commercial building project. Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission may be involved. They have their own regulations. The health department may be involved. They have their own requirements.
Okay.
We have, it may be that zoning regulations, which typically are applicable to most projects, you have to consider what those may be. So there are several codes and regulations to consider. For the codes that we use in commercial building, most of those can be found online. Most of those have free access that folks can go online and take a look at those. So if you go to the ICC website, I think it's iccsafe.org. Their codes are there online for free viewing.
Okay.
NFPA as well, I believe it's nfpa.org. Also has free versions that can be viewed online, and that encompasses a wide range of the codes that we do look at in commercial building.
And certainly if you're doing a large commercial project, you have design professionals that have access to these codes, can talk you through what is applicable to your project and what isn't. Yes.
Right. And what else is important to keep in mind is that we have our own local regulations. So what we just talked about are model codes.
Okay.
But local jurisdictions have their own amendments to those codes, their own regulations. So it's very important that folks check those out. Their design professionals are aware of those and that those requirements are incorporated into their design. We do require that whomever is the design professional on the project is licensed in the state of Maryland.
Okay.
And hopefully they're familiar with our codes and standards. That would be very helpful for a project within our jurisdiction.
And on our website, we have a list of codes that DPS uses. We don't have the actual code books or the full code version, but we have the list of codes that you all use in evaluating plans, so folks can look for that on our website. Yes,
right, we sure do. We have a master code list on our website. It will list out the codes that are applicable. It will list out the additions that we're under at the current time.
Okay.
It will provide a link to any executive regulations that we may have for certain codes. So that is available on our website as well. It's also important to note that about every 3 years, codes change. So you may want to, make sure you're checking to see what code additions we're under before designing and submitting your project. We're undergoing a code change right now, and we're hoping that we adopt new codes by the end of this year.
Yes.
So, it's important to just check and make sure that, don't assume that you know what code additions are current. Check and make sure before the design is complete, before you submit for permit, so that we don't have to reject a project because it's not designed under the appropriate edition of the code.
Okay. Crystal, we've talked about commercial building safety and how it impacts some housing units, and we've covered use and occupancy certificates, especially for small businesses or folks opening restaurants. And we've discussed building safety in general and the code in general. What else is important for our listeners to know on the topic of building safety? Is there anything new this year?
So as far as new this year, we had already mentioned that there may be some code updates. So it's important for listeners to check on our website, make sure that they're following the latest editions of the codes and regulations. It's also very important for listeners to understand that building safety is top priority for our department. And this is because we help to ensure that a building is meeting the minimum requirements to ensure that level of safety, that the building or structure has the appropriate lighting, ventilation, power, structural stability, has the appropriate egress system to get people out of the building in case of a fire or other emergency event, has the appropriate features for first responders so that they may respond in case of an event. And so, these are very important. We look for these features that are necessary to minimize danger and ensure the safety to people's lives. And that is what is of utmost importance to the department.
If our listeners can remember take away three things from this podcast today, what are those three things? What do you want them to remember the most?
There are so many things. First, I know we talked quite a bit about preliminary design consultations, but It is very important that folks come to us early, have conversations early, have those preliminary design consultations prior to submitting for permit. That's very important.
Okay.
Number two would be, if there are any questions, let us know. It's good to iron out any concerns earlier rather than later.
Yes.
So communicate with us, talk to us, let us know your timeline, let us know your challenges. We're here. And thirdly, especially with maybe the smaller businesses or folks that maybe don't go through this process very often, It may seem like when we indicate a certain requirement that is not being met, that we are not helping the project along.
Okay.
But we are absolutely here to help and not hinder. So we want to see businesses operate. We want to see folks get through the process. We want businesses to be successful. So we are here to help. Please reach out.
I'm going to add a fourth thing.
Please do.
Because we talk about it all the time, and I want to make sure that folks pay attention to it before you sign a lease, before you put down money. Please come and talk to DPS before you do that stuff. So we don't want you to waste money. We don't want folks to enter into contracts that they're not going to be able to fulfill, or that it's going to cost them more money on the back end.
Right. Absolutely. And so going back again to that preliminary design, this podcast wasn't necessarily about that, but that has just come into play so much. But it's never too early. You can come in even if you're considering a property to purchase or a property space that you want to lease. You can come talk to us, even if you don't have any plans yet. You just want to ask very preliminary questions. We're here. So don't hesitate.
All right. Thank you, Crystal, for joining us on the podcast today. Crystal Maddox, who is manager in, let me get it right, DPS Architectural, Life Safety, and Fire Protection.
You missed one, Gail.
Whatever it is.
Accessibility.
Accessibility.
So, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you for joining us on the podcast today. Thank you for listening. Please check out the Montgomery County Department of Permitting Services website at montgomerycountymd.gov/DPS to find information and resources to help you with your next project. Remember, DPS is here to help you, our customers, succeed. It's important to know when to get a permit and why a permit is necessary. If you have any questions about the permitting process, you can reach out to our customer support team by calling 311 or 240-777-0311. Or you can stop by our offices at 2425 Reedy Drive in Wheaton. We're on the 7th floor, and we're open Monday through Friday from 7:30 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. And we have folks on site that can assist you with your permitting process, with getting you to folks that can answer your questions, and helping make sure that your application packets are complete. Got an idea or a question for an upcoming podcast? We want to hear from you. Email your ideas and questions to dps.podcast@montgomerycountymd.gov. And if you found this podcast helpful, please share it with your friends and your family, and subscribe so you can get our latest episodes. Until next time, I'm Gail Lucas. Remember, DPS is your project partner.